I am Ridian James, and I feel I may be in terrible danger. We all very well may be. When I say we, I mean my people and yours, the human race. Allow me to elaborate. I am not human. Not entirely, anyway. My humanity has long left me. I am an empty shell, pretending to be human. I believe you refer to us as vampires. Makes no difference what you call me. I will always be one step ahead of you. But I didn't leave this message for the world to be afraid of me. No. There is much scarier things in the world besides me. That is why I have made this story, hoping to warn the world of one of the many things that go bump in the night, besides yours truly. It all started a month back, when there was a string of murder cases in my hometown. I usually stay to myself, but I wasn't anonymous, so I became the #1 suspect, of course. Did I kill a few people? Sure, but I wasn't some serial killer. This murder spree piqued my interest. I wanted to find the guy who was causing all the commotion. I thought it would be nice to either shake his hand or perhaps even slit his throat. I wasn't sure which yet. Either way, he would get my congratulations. He managed to get what I never could: attention. Not that I mind, of course. You see, I spend most of my days in my shell, so to speak. I may roam around in the sun as I please if I wanted to. I never did, though. I preferred my days to be spent in isolation, away from the stench of humanity and their weak ways. I had no desire for social activity, but late one afternoon, I hear a knocking on my door. "Who is it?" I said in response to this annoying noise rattling my eardrums. I quickly dart over to the door at an unnatural speed, turning the doorknob and slightly cracking open the wooden door so that my face is barely discernible in the darkness of the room. An Officer Carla Jones from the police department stood at my door. She says she's in an ongoing investigation regarding the recent murders. She wanted to ask me a couple of questions. "Yes, you may ask as you wish," I said to her, as to not arouse suspicion. As far as I knew, nobody in this backwater town was aware of my true nature, and I intended to keep it that way. "First off, where were you 2 nights ago at 7 p.m.? She asked me. Let me think. I was at home as I usually am that time of night. What were you doing in this hour? I was resting and reading a book. I was trying not to sound abnormal, obviously lying through my teeth. Wasn't exactly in a hurry to tell her that I'm a vampire, and that if she kept asking me questions, she would be my next victim. I kept that part to myself for the time being. After a few questions and a forced farewell from both parties, she left back to her job, and I was back to my isolation. That very night, I sensed something amidst us in the town. I could smell it. I exited my home and slipped out into the shadow of night. There was a stretch of forest behind where I lived. I began to enter said forest when I noticed there was a trail of blood. I could smell the iron emanating from it. It was most certainly human blood. I headed further into the forest to investigate. A moment later, I heard a woman let out a shrill scream, and I immediately replaced myself into the vicinity of it. Upon arrival, I found the young woman lying on the ground. No pulse. She was already gone. This actually stunned me. What could have possibly caused this to happen so rapidly? There was nothing on this earth that could possibly outmatch my speed. Or so I thought. "Show yourself, coward," I muttered out with a stern tone in my voice. Only silence fell in response to my threatening statement. I looked as far as I could see in the distance. There was something moving out there. I could barely make out a shadowy figure lurking its way through the foliage in the distance, obviously doing nothing to hide itself, as if it wasn't afraid of being spotted. And perhaps it wasn't. I wasn't sure what to make of this. I became overly curious and quickly dashed to the spot in question. And just at the snap of a fingertip, the beast was gone. What could possibly be this damn fast? I thought to myself. I started to become enraged at the mere thought of something else on this planet being more fierce and vastly faster than myself. I could see nothing but red for all of a moment. I quickly pulled myself into clarity as I realized I was still alone. Oh well, perhaps tomorrow then? I whispered under my breath, trying to get a rise out of the creature. I sighed and ran my way back home, slamming the door behind me. Enough investigations for one night, I thought to myself. I closed my eyes and began to rest. The next morning, I once more was arisen to the sound of yet another woman screaming. This time, she wasn't screaming for help. I slowly creep out of my own door and sneak into the crowd of people all gathered around the source of this disturbance. We all stared down at what was left of a mutilated wolf, freshly killed by the looks of it. I'm sure you're aware that wolves are very fierce creatures. They also travel in packs. So why then was this wolf alone and disemboweled? What could have done this? I grew ever so tired of this question. "Allow me to take a look," I said aloud, parting my way through the crowd. "What happened to it?" I heard one of the commoners' questions as I examined the corpse, or what was left of it, I should say. The wolf's appendages, all barely held together, as if purposely torn apart just enough to strike fear into the hearts of men. The eyes of the creature rolled full tilt to the top of its skull, intestines laid out for the entire world to see. This wasn't some act of hunger or malicious intent, nor did it serve any purpose other than one: to get my attention. And oh, did it work. I could sense this beast was somewhere nearby, seemingly taunting us, taunting me, watching me. It was playing games with me, putting on this little puppet show. This only enraged me more. I rose to my feet as I began to ponder what was this thing's end game. Whatever it was, it's gone on long enough. I needed to devise a plan to draw the creature out into the open. A trap, so to speak. "Move out of my way," I snarled at the crowd as I pushed my way back out of it. I returned home and began to think of a scheme that might draw the attention of this being. "Ah, of course," I said as I realized my plan quite literally walked up to my doorstep. Officer Carla Jones. I let out a maniacal laugh, thinking of how brilliant my plan was. I would use her to my advantage. I preferred not to slay innocent humans, but I had no rules against killing another animal. However, something told me they were fresh out of wolves. I'm assuming as soon as the rest of the pack witnessed the death of their comrade, they wanted no parts in the conflict with this creature and left as far away as possible. Tails tucked between their legs and all that. I'm starting to think I had an actual formidable foe. I wasn't sure whether to be entirely enraged or perhaps feel a tingle of excitement. This was the most fun I had in decades. A part of me didn't want to capture this creature, whatever it was. On the other hand, it has made several attempts to make a fool out of me. With this, I decided to proceed with my plan. Several hours passed, and it was time for Carla's nightly patrol around the town. Since the killings began, she was enacted as the town's personal little bodyguard. Little did they know the most dangerous thing of all was right under their noses. Me. Well, this is what I originally thought, until this thing showed up and ruined all my fun. It was about time I made a fool out of it. Carla was doing her patrol as usual when she comes across an unusual sound. It sounds like a whining moan coming from some dark corner of the town. Upon further investigation of the noise, she realizes that it is a goat with its throat slit, just enough for it to slowly bleed out, but not enough where it won't produce the sound I needed it to. I knew if I got Carla out in the open, this creature couldn't resist the temptation of fresh meat. I played no part in what was to come next. Carla let out a blood-curdling scream. I thought my ears were going to burst. She screamed over and over until finally she stopped altogether. I hastily ran to the scene. I was mortified by what I saw. I didn't think it was possible, but what I witnessed shocked me to my very core. For once in all of my lifetimes, I felt fear. I was fast enough to catch a mere glimpse of my fearsome opponent. It stood at least 9 feet tall, and it had hind legs that stretched for an impossible amount of distance. It was completely covered in blood. It had razor-sharp claws that were incredibly long. They were as nearly as long as an arm. Its body was completely covered in fur and sported a wolf-like head. Its eyes were a crimson red glow, close to the hue of my own very hellish eyes. What's worse about this thing is, it had what remained of Carla in between its teeth, as her lower half hung out of its mouth I could hear Carla screaming for life through this creature's throat as her lower half twitched and struggled to be free. What happened next would have driven any mere mortal mad. It unhinged its jaw, allowing Carla's terrifying screams to be heard afar and wide. Then in an instant, it tilted its head backwards and swallowed her whole. As brave as I considered myself, I was speechless at this moment. I started to move, but before I could, the creature stooped down to me with an incredible speed and pinned me to the ground. I attempted to fight back, but it was as if I was pushing against gravity itself. There was no winning. I slowly inched it. It slowly inched its elongated neck towards me and spoke to me in a very chilled tone.
Not you. Not yet.
I think you'll find I am no mere mortal, I said to him. You will not defeat me this easily. In an instant, I took on my second form and evaporated into a cloud of smoke. Making my way towards my home, I looked backwards and realized the creature vanished into thin air. It was gone once more. At least it finally showed itself to me. How was I going to be able to defeat such a creature? Perhaps I couldn't. Now wasn't the time to wonder, though. This creature was swift and deadly. It could easily strike at me at any moment. I decided to once more hatch a scheme. This time my life was seemingly at stake. Didn't know of my true nature? I asked myself, as I delved deep into the thoughts of how to deal with this thing. After all of these years, nothing stood in my way. Nothing could best me. This was the only thing that did. I had no information on this creature. However, I think I might have known who would be able to access it. My master. The one who originally turned me into what I am now. The next morning I headed out on my way to the Smoky Mountains, where he resided in a cave. Dredging through the forest, I could hear I was being followed. I knew it had to be him. He was toying with me once more. That damn thing. I could hear a faint chuckle, like a 10-year-old boy playing with his puppy for the first time. He seemed almost gleeful to see me vulnerable in his presence. I knew I had no way of stopping him. He was immensely faster and stronger than I am. I had not the slightest chance in defeating him with what I knew at the moment. I wasn't entirely certain the master would have the answer I needed. It would certainly have to take a lot to take this thing down. I constantly glanced over my shoulder, feeling his every movement. He was still lurking around me after miles and miles of rapid-paced movement. I quickly turned around as fast as I could, but he was always one step ahead of me. Finally, I had enough of these foolish games. I formed into a cloud once more and started to soar above the trees. To my surprise, the noises stopped following me. This wasn't the end of it, though. I was suddenly struck down with a mighty force of wind. I couldn't believe it. I was returned to my original form as I crashed into the forest floor. Taking no more chances, I decided to run as fast as I possibly could, leaving not a moment of leeway for him to catch me. It seemed to work for now. I was ahead of him for the time being. I arrived at the foot of the mountains. Above me was a sight of steep cliffs, rocky hillsides, and low-hanging clouds. There was no running away this time, and I certainly wouldn't risk flying again. I had to climb this mountain like a human, vulnerable. I began to make my ascension upwards towards the cave, tucked away into the hillside. This is where my master resided. Shockingly, I made it up the cliffs and hillsides and was safely perched upon the platform that held the entrance to my master's cave. I entered without a second glance to the outside world. I delved deeper and deeper into the cave, and soon met the sound of my master's voice calling out to me. "Ridian, is that you?" "Yes, master. I have returned. I require your guidance." "I told you I don't meddle into the affairs of humans. You never listen, do you?" "This doesn't affect only the humans, but perhaps our kind as well, master." "Something got you on edge, Ridian. What could possibly have you coming into my home to cry wolf?" "Master, I have met a foe unlike any other. This creature stalks me day and night without remorse. It is much faster than any of our kind. I do not know its origin, nor do I know how to destroy it." My master stood silent for a moment, seemingly puzzled. "Describe this creature to me." "It is hind-legged, stands over 9 feet tall, with razor-sharp teeth, and it can speak." "Master, what is it?" I questioned him as he stood there speechless, face frozen in place. He gurgled out as he started to spew blood from his mouth. In an instant, he was ripped in half, right in front of my very eyes. As he split and reached the ground, it was revealed the creature of my nightmares is standing directly behind him. My master's flesh fastened tightly onto his claws.
There is no record of my being, vampire.
I wasted no time listening to him as he spouted words towards me. I ran as fast as I could once more and formed into a cloud of smoke as soon as I reached the exit of the cave. As I got closer to my town, I see pillars of smoke and fire blazing through the entire vicinity. It was chaos. I was unsure of what was happening. I landed hastily and began to look around. The streets were littered with mutilated corpses and ravaged pieces of the homes the people resided in. It was the stuff of nightmares. Blood filled every brim of the town. There wasn't a man, child, or woman left alive. Everybody was dead. Despite the fires burning their way through everything, it was quiet. No screams, no signs of struggle. Just death and destruction. It was eerie. Just as I soak in my surroundings, I feel a warm breath down my neck. The creature said from behind me.
This is merely a taste of my intentions and power. Perhaps I will share the rest with you one day. I don't want you dead just yet. I wanted you to see what I'm capable of. Far more than you can imagine. I assure you, one day, I'll be back for you,
Before I could utter a single
and it
word,
will be your
the
turn.
creature was gone. I turned to look behind me, but I knew there was going to be nothing there to see. My turn? What did he mean by that? I was petrified. I stood in place for what seemed like an eternity, paralyzed by fear. That same night, I decided to move far, far away. I packed as lightly as I could and journeyed westward to where I am now. I'm hoping that you can reach this message for the sake of humanity and otherwise. I have to end it here. I can hear shallow breathing and a scratch on my door. I live alone in the middle of nowhere.